Well, welcome to the show. I am so excited to have author Misty Beller with us.
Yes.
Misty, thank you for joining me today. Appreciate it.
It's exciting.
Can you just tell us about your books and what kind of genre you write or subgenre, whatever?
Yes.
Whatever that means.
Yes, absolutely. I write Christian historical romance, which can cover a really broad spectrum. My specific books are in the 1800s and almost always in the Rocky Mountains. I love the Rockies, so probably 37 of my books have been set there. I have one trilogy set in Texas, but I love those remote settings, just the grandeur of the mountains that just go on, and strong heroes and heroines. Usually my heroes are mountain men who can handle themselves, cooking over an open fire and hunting for food and whatnot. So some of my books are set as early as the 1810s, 1812-ish.
Okay.
So that was like way back, just right after Lewis and Clark did their expedition west. So very much in the trapping days, but some of my books actually go almost to 1880, which in Montana, 1880 was kind of that shifting point where the train reached Montana and gas lighting and just everything became so much more modern in 1880. So I don't
Not
usually...
gaslighting today, right?
Right, not that kind of gaslighting. Truly gas lines that went and lit the lampposts in the city streets. But yeah, I don't write modern settings. Mine tend to be very rustic.
Sure. And so you're
simpler life.
You're from South Carolina.
Yes.
Did you travel to the Rockies where you saw this and got inspired, or how did that come about?
Yeah. So I was born and raised in upstate South Carolina, but we have family in California. And when I was a kid, every other year we would drive across the country, and we would take a different route each time. So sometimes we would take I-10 and I-20 through lower Texas and across that way and see the desert. And sometimes we'd take I-40 across the middle. But sometimes we would take I-70 or even I-90 across the top, and we would go through the heart of the Rockies. And those were my favorite trips. I really found the place I love. And my older brother, who's 18 months older than I am, he felt the same way. For many years he thought he was going to move to Montana as soon as he was old enough to do so. And he actually took a trip out there to scope out land and look for a ranch to buy. And then very shortly after that, he met a girl back in South Carolina. And so he
Plans changed.
Yes, he now owns a ranch in South Carolina. But the whole family still dreams of moving to Montana.
Oh, very cool. So you said 37 of your books are set in the Rockies. 37 books. And that actually, you have more. You said you just had written your 40th book.
Yes.
That's incredible.
Yes, it's a lot. It's a lot. I started writing at the beginning of 2013.
That's only 10 years. 40 books in 10 years?
Yes, it sounds crazy now that I say that aloud. And my first book actually took almost a year to write. So I write full time, so I'm very, very blessed to get to live the dream in that way. And I just have a daily word count, and I have a production schedule, and I usually release somewhere between 4 and 6 books a year. And
wow,
it's fun. It's fun to always be. So when I'm working on one book, I always have the next one percolating, and I'm blessed to have a really amazing brainstorming group of author friends. And whenever I'm kind of stuck for ideas, they just start throwing out, oh, wouldn't it be neat if this, or what if this, or have you thought about this? And it's amazing. It's amazing what those little sparks shooting out, what can flame to life. And
yes,
it's a lot of fun. It really is.
Oh, that's great. So you have 2 books here. Tell us about these 2.
Yes, so this one is Rocky Mountain Rendezvous. This is book 1 in the Sisters of the Rockies series. This book released this past June 2023. And it kicks off a new series that I'm so excited about. 4 sisters go west. Their father, on his deathbed, asked them to take a blue crystal bead necklace back to a Native American woman who had saved his life back when he was a younger man. And he wanted to give it back to her as a gift. So his daughters decide to do that themselves, so they go west and they find themselves in the midst of a Rocky Mountain rendezvous, which was the big, huge gathering that all the fur trappers and Native Americans came together to meet the supply train, or the supply wagon, that would come west once a year in July. And there were about 1,000 men all camped there in the valley that these sisters rode into. And this book is the second sister's story as they search for this Native American woman. And it's a really fun story. My books are always very adventurous. They're romance for sure, but they keep you flipping the pages. So.
All right.
And then I have another new series that's kicking off this year. I usually have 2 series that I'm writing at the same time, so I'll kind of alternate between the books. So this is book 1, Healing the Mountain Man's Heart, book 1 in the Brothers of Sapphire Ranch series. So this series is set in Wyoming, in the Green River Valley, and this series is set in Montana. And this story is kind of a mail order bride gone wrong, we call it. She and her sister go west. Her sister is supposed to be a mail order bride, and when they get to the remote ranch set way back on the back of this mountain, very hard to find, they get there and the man who's supposed to be the groom says, "I didn't send for a bride." So yeah, it becomes quite a story from there. So these are both so much fun to write. Totally different characters, but yet my heroines are always, you just had to be strong back then to go west. You couldn't be very flappable, or you just had to have some pretty good starch in your spine.
Grit to you.
Yeah, exactly. And the heroes are again, you had to be tough to be in the West, but everybody has their dark past and wounds to work through, and just the grace of God and God's guidance on their lives, weaving this story that is so beautiful to see from a distance, especially when you're looking back. The same way God works the same tapestry in our lives. So.
Yeah. And so what do you hope readers will take away from a Misty Beller book?
Yeah, I hope that it opens a reader's eyes to see the way God has worked their own story. I see that so many times in my own life, but if we don't stop and look at it, we forget to thank Him for the way He's brought even the hardest times, even the way He plans some of the hard times, to grow us to the point that we need to be to step into the promises that He has for us.
That's a good reminder to all of us. Yes, it's
something I have to remind myself of daily.
Yes. So how about your journey to become published? How did that go? It's so interesting to hear different perspectives on journeys. Everyone
has their own journey. It's amazing. None are the same at all. So I began writing at the beginning of 2013. It was a bucket list item. I was working in the corporate world and married and had 2 kids, but I just really was feeling burnout and just like I was missing something. So I put together a bucket list and thought, I'm gonna step outside of this little tunnel that I've been living in, and write a book that's published. Made the list, and it was one of the only things on there that was free or inexpensive. So I decided to start that in January of that year. And I started a book that became The Rancher Takes a Cook. So it's one of the 3 books that's not set in the Rockies. And it was definitely a learning process for sure. I thank God once again for libraries. I went to my library and got all the books on on writing craft and how to write a novel and plot and structure and all those things. But as I was working my way through that story, I realized I love this writing thing. This is the piece I was missing. This, it was my me time. It was the way I would, kind of escape into a different story world for a while and then come back and be a better person in real world. So as I was writing that book, near the end, I started to get this idea for a story of a mail-order bride who goes west, and when she gets there, her groom is dead, but his older brother and his younger sister are there, and anyway, they live in a cabin set in a very remote setting on the backside of a mountain, a couple hours ride away from Butte, Montana, and she ends up snowed in there with a broken leg, and the story just came alive in my mind, and couldn't finish writing the other book fast enough so that I could start that story. And so that was my first story set in the Rockies, and I found my happy place. I really did. And that book became The Lady and the Mountain Man. And that's been a reader favorite. It's definitely one of my favorites as well. So
awesome. Well, how can people learn more if they want to see all what your other books are?
Yeah, my website's the best place, mistymbeller.com. M for Michelle, can't forget that M. At my website, I also give away a free ebook to Honors Mountain Promise, which is a novella in the Hearts of Montana series. So readers are welcome to get that and sign up for my newsletter, which I send updates on new books and books that go on sale and all the fun stuff. And they can get just a peek into the craziness of my life with 5 kids and full-time writing.
Wow.
So.
Wow. Thank you so much for talking with me today. And I do have a quick question.
Yes.
Do you see yourself writing anything other than Rocky Mountain in the future? Can
That's
you see
a
that?
really hard question. I love my Rockies so much. I think it's possible. I think that if I did leave the Rockies per se, I might still be somewhere in the mountains,
okay.
Whether it be the Appalachians. I live just a couple hours from the Blue Ridge Mountains in the east, but there's some pretty mountain ranges in Europe too, so I don't think I could ever completely leave the brand just because it's so near and dear to my heart, but there's never say never.
Yeah.
God leads in many unusual ways.
He sure does. Wow. Well, thank you again, Misty.
Thank you.
And that's Misty Beller. Check her out, connect with her, and I just appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Yes.
It's fun.